Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rewatch podcast. My name is Samuel,
And my name is Jayden.
and this is a podcast where we talk extensively about a certain film and then decide whether it deserves a rewatch from you. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other place you listen to podcasts. If you enjoy the show, please leave a like on the YouTube video. If you'd like to reach the show, you can leave a comment on YouTube or send us an email at theonerewatchpodcast@gmail.com. It's a special episode today because we're going to be talking about what film, Jayden?
The best film ever made, that is, which is The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight. We've sort of been trying to do a podcast on it for a while, but
Since the start, it's been like 3 years.
Yeah.
And kind of embarrassing.
Today is finally the day that we discuss perhaps the best superhero or perhaps even the best film just ever made.
Yep.
So it doesn't really need an introduction, but let's give it the story overview. What's the story synopsis for The Dark Knight?
Let me put on my Batman voice here.
Oh God, here we go.
Batman raises the thing. I can't even do it. It's so bad. Batman raises the stakes in his war on crime. With the help of Lieutenant Jim Gordon and District Attorney Harvey Dent, Batman sets out to dismantle the remaining criminal organizations that plague the streets. The partnership proves to be effective, but they soon find themselves prey to a reign of chaos unleashed by a rising criminal mastermind known to the terrified citizens of Gotham as the Joker.
Nice. That's a great synopsis, I think.
Yeah, that is a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, it encompasses all the different, elements of the film, which is quite hard to do. There's a lot of things going on. But then, also just, states the obvious, really, and then finishes with the Joker. So, some factual information about the film. The budget was $185 million. So,
wow.
I think at the time, 2008, that's very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take into account inflation as well.
And also take into account the fact that superhero movies, obviously we've had Batman Begins by this stage, but in this period, 2008, we hadn't had many big blockbuster superhero films. So to put $185 million behind this, a bit risky. Yeah, but they raked in the rewards, didn't they?
Well, you also have to think, you sort of mentioned that there was no superhero movies really at this point in time. This was also the dawn of the MCU. Iron Man came out the same year, and I think it's clear who won, right?
Well, is it? What do you mean?
Like who won the race? Well,
in terms of the better film.
Yeah, what's the better film?
Yes, yeah. It is crazy to think that, the MCU, despite it, it's still going to this day. I mean, it really has died, but, it's sort of, it's dead, but it's still going, if that makes any sense. It's like
they're flogging a dead horse, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. How far are we into this podcast? 4 minutes and we're already trashing the MCU.
Well, it's interesting to note, that this was the second film in the franchise, and the MCU got started in the same year. That's pretty crazy, because you'd think that these Batman films sort of came before all of it, came long before the sort of superhero craze that we live for now. There's just something that makes them stand out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it raked it in at the box office. It was a global phenomenon, $1 billion.
That's crazy. And that's counting to this day?
No, I think that is from 2008. So adjusted for inflation, it'll be much more.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It is. And certainly a huge milestone for the superhero genre. The film won 2 Oscars, one for Best Sound Editing, which I'm sure is a bit controversial considering Christopher Nolan and his sound editing. But the other Oscar is certainly not controversial, and that is for Best Supporting Actor, obviously going to Heath Ledger, who plays the Joker in the film. But I think that's a pretty justified award, don't you think?
Yeah, so he got that posthumously, didn't he?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it sits at number 3 of IMDb's top 100 films of all time.
Let me guess
It's,
what's first and second.
I believe it is
Shawshank,
Shawshank and
and then Godfather.
Godfather,
Yeah.
and then The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
So
Godfather 2 must be fourth.
I think so. So it's amongst some very high class film company there.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into some general thoughts about the film. Would you recommend this film to someone who has not seen it, Jayden?
I mean, you're crazy if you haven't seen this film in the first place, but most definitely has my recommendation. It sort of balances that like film nerd sort of itch, like it scratches
Mm.
that itch, but it also, it caters to all the people that like the big blockbuster superhero movies, um, and it just balances that so well. So yeah, I would highly recommend this to anyone that hasn't seen it, because you're just bound to like it. Like there's so much here for everyone.
I mean, it's one of your favorite movies of all time, wouldn't you say?
Well, it is my favorite movie of all time.
And why do you have that opinion? What makes this film stand out above literally all other films? You know, even not even talking in superhero genre, just films in general.
Well, let me just preface this and say that like Lord of the Rings is really close behind this. Um, but like The Dark Knight is just, every single watch is just so enthralling. Like it,
Mm.
I don't know how to describe it. Like every time you watch it, even considering its length, it's just such an enjoyable watch. And every single watch, you pick up something new. And I've watched this movie like countless times. Like I don't even know how many times, and every single time it's enjoyable.
Yeah, I think there's something about the pacing of the film.
Mm,
You know, it just sort of grabs you from that opening scene, and it doesn't let go of you. Everything is so well paced. You know,
yeah,
every scene, it doesn't go for a second longer than it needs to. There's so much sort of story information, character development that's happening in such quick succession,
mm,
and you really don't get a chance to breathe. But that's not to say that the film feels like a mess or rushed or whatever. Everything feels so perfectly paced.
yeah. Mm.
So, yeah.
That's it's a good point you raised there. It's very. I'm just going to bring up Oppenheimer here because there's a very obvious comparison. Like that movie as well, it like seizes your attention from like the get go, and then there's like a brief moment, you know, 2/3 of the way through the movie where the Trinity test sequence happens and the explosion happens, and then
Mm.
you sort of have a break, and then it's right back to like really intense, hard dialogue sequences, and I think that's very similar here. Like the dialogue here is, and we'll have a chat about it, but the dialogue here is like phenomenal. Like it's so good.
Mm. Yeah, it does remind me a bit of Oppenheimer in terms of we were just speaking about it on the last podcast how Christopher Nolan's films, the dialogue is so fast,
Mm.
and one character will talk as soon as the other character finishes talking, and
Yeah.
there's not a lot of room to breathe
Mm.
for the audience member. It's sort of like if you duck out, if you're watching this film for the first time and you duck out for 10 minutes, you're risking
Yeah.
not understanding the entirety of Joker's plan
Yeah.
or Bruce's motivations or Rachel's storyline or Harvey Dent's storyline. There are all these different elements. Jim Gordon's storyline. They're all such vital components of The Dark Knight.
Mm.
And if you miss out on any of them, the whole thing is certainly worse because, like all Nolan films, it builds up to that epic conclusion where we have the tying up of all the loose ends.
Mm-hmm.
So if you miss a bit of it, it's at your own sort of peril.
Yeah, for sure.
So rewatching The Dark Knight, obviously we watched it together last night.
Mm-hmm.
You've mentioned you've watched it a few times. Um,
A few is a bit of an understatement.
yeah, so how, how is it on a rewatch? Do you recommend rewatching the film? And as you rewatch it, do you like the film less or do you like the film more? Do you find new things or?
Um, when you say this question, do you mean like is it worth a rewatch from someone who's only seen it once?
No, I mean, how's your experience rewatching the film? You know, does it?
Oh, it's
Do you?
yeah. I mean, every single time I watch it, it's. I wouldn't say it gets better because um, I just kind of I don't know how to describe it. Like I kind of view the movie as um, just like its own experience. Like I don't
Mm,
really look at it as like a film. And this is gonna sound like really fucking pretentious, but um, yeah, I don't really analyze the film from the perspective of like, you know what, this worked better for me this time,
mm,
or I didn't pick up on that last time, and now that's more clear. It's it's just like its own thing, you know. Um,
mm.
but highly, highly, highly recommend a rewatch, and I think if this question's kind of like redundant anyway because if you're going for a rewatch of The Dark Knight, it's most likely that you've seen it like countless times already. So, um, but for sure, highly recommend a rewatch.
Yeah, I think, you know, with most Nolan films, as we've said previously, you know, when you go back to rewatch it, you know, if you watch this film for the first time, you might find certain subplots to be um, sort of complicated,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps. You know, you might not be able to follow 100% of everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not to say that the film's confusing. It just happens very quickly, and you need to be very engaged
Yeah,
to follow all the different characters.
yeah. It's kind of
So,
like the beginner level Nolan film. Like if you're trying to get into Nolan movies, like this is what you watch.
oh, absolutely. I mean, these Batman films are pretty much Nolan's uh, only linear
Mm.
time frame movies, right? You know, think of Inception, Interstellar, Tenet, or even Oppenheimer. All of these films are jumping around in terms of chronologically and deliberately so, trying to confuse you deliberately so that you can see a different perspective
Yeah.
and, you know, make a payoff later on now that you have new information presented to you by the movie through the entirety of its runtime.
Mm.
Whereas this is just from A to B.
Yeah. I can't speak for the following, but I know Insomnia's that was like his first um test of this like confusing timeline stuff that he gets himself into.
Right.
But yeah, pretty much all of his films, bar the Batman trilogy, um, are just all over the place. Just
And
timelines going everywhere.
how do you think Nolan's films, do they suffer or do they benefit from his timantic nonsense? You know,
Timeline nonsense.
do you appreciate the Nolan films that are just from A to B, or you know, do you find them to be less interesting?
Um, I mentioned this on the Oppenheimer podcast, but it almost challenges you watching
Mm.
these movies with these really confusing timelines because um, it it forces you to pay more attention. You could watch The Dark Knight Rises and zone out for maybe a few minutes, and you know you're all good. But if you zone out for a few minutes in Oppenheimer, like you're completely stuffed. Like
Mm.
you've missed the dropping of the bomb. You've um, Oppenheimer's employed at some university now, and Einstein's just said something
Yeah,
important.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, if you watch The Dark Knight Rises, you're probably going to be fine if you miss a few minutes. Um, but no, I definitely think that his movies benefit from the confusing timelines. It makes them stand out, and it's sort of like um, it's like his recognizable trait now. You know, if a Nolan movie doesn't have some messed up timeline and something's gone wrong.
Yeah, yeah, but it is interesting. Think obviously we would both say that this is his best movie,
Mm.
and it doesn't include the main characteristic of the director, which is
Yeah,
the timeline, the non-linear storytelling sort of
yeah.
thing. So yeah, it's interesting. I think Nolan would make great films if he just did them normally. Like I
Oh yeah,
think
he probably would.
a
Yeah,
lot of people are saying, "Oh, geez, Tenet was kind of a Bond film, but it had sort of this Nolan, time linear, time, puzzle
yeah.
nonsense put into it." So what if he just did a normal Bond film? What would that look like? Would that be awesome? And I think it would be.
Mm.
So yeah, I think um, yeah, it's just interesting to note. Like this is a movie that just goes from A to B, and it's his best one. So
Mm.
yeah, let's get into the acting and the characters involved in The Dark Knight. We
Mm-hmm.
have Christian Bale as Batman. What do you think of Christian Bale as Batman in this film in particular?
um, this for me, he's always been the weakest part of the movie. Um, Out of like the cast, but
Mm.
that's not to say that he's um turns in a bad performance or anything. I mean, he's a great Batman and probably an even better Bruce Wayne, but um, he just sort of, and I think you mentioned this, he just sort of gets outshined by like the rest of the supporting cast. Heath Ledger, Aaron Eckhart, Gary Oldman, and whatnot. But I definitely like him as Batman. I think we'll have a discussion about the voice that
Mm.
might be a bit of a controversial one there, but um, yeah, I think he's great in this movie, and um, him as Bruce Wayne is just so funny sometimes. Like he really is the heart of the humor in this movie, um, which is funny to say because you wouldn't think that Batman would bring the humor, but he does.
Yeah, there are some really good, witty lines.
Mm.
There are some good dialogue exchanges that sort of incite a bit of a chuckle, especially between Bruce Wayne and Alfred,
Yeah,
played by
Michael
Michael
Caine.
Caine.
Mm.
And what do you think of Michael Caine in as Alfred
Oh,
in this movie?
just great, isn't he? Like he's
He's very dependable, isn't he? I
yeah,
wouldn't say he's well, actually, he is quite similar to Alfred depicted in some of the comics. Like that's
uh-huh.
sort of very, very old, quiet man,
Wisdom.
but yeah, offering that piece of advice every now and then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he's fantastic. Really dependable. You know what you're going to get from him. And same with Morgan Freeman in this movie. He sort of comes in to give Bruce Wayne sort of that moral compass,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're really effective, both Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman, in those roles.
Mm.
Outstanding actors in their own right, and they certainly could um, be and are often many times the lead in their own films.
Yeah.
But they play such great supporting roles here.
Yeah. 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 It's funny how that works, right? Like, um, we've never had a Nolan film with Michael Caine as the lead, and we probably will never. Um, but when you talk about him being dependable as Alfred, he's also just so dependable as like an actor. Like, I don't think I've
Mm.
ever seen a bad Michael Caine performance. Um, even a even a bad Morgan Freeman performance. Like, they're just such good actors, and they don't have much in this movie, but what they do with it is just great.
Yes, and speaking of which, perhaps we'll save Heath Ledger for last, but let's talk about Gary Oldman and Aaron Eckhart because I mean, Gary Oldman, firstly, is, I think, one of the best actors just alive today.
Mm-hmm.
He is sensational.
Mm-hmm.
And his Jim Gordon is by far the best Jim Gordon we've seen.
I'm so glad you
It's
said that.
it's not even close. It's not even close.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone will ever be able to do it as good as him.
Mm.
And sure, maybe he doesn't have the exact sort of ginger haired mustache look from the comics, but it's pretty close. And I can excuse not being a exact replica
Mm-hmm.
of the comic version, but he has the thematic elements.
I was going to say. Mm.
He has the character traits. You know, he's got a very tough and interesting family situation that we see sort of spiral uncontrollably into the next film. We see his sort of distrust of the police department, his ability to work with Batman but not necessarily approve of Batman's sort of style of justice. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think he is just absolutely sensational. By far,
Mm-hmm.
one of the best things about the entire trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Gary
For
Oldman.
sure. For sure. I think him and Christian Bale have the best chemistry in this movie. Um, Out of any of the
Mm.
supporting actors, like, um, I, I think Nolan probably could have done more with Christian Bale or Batman and the Joker's relationship. Like, he doesn't really um, go really far into that sort of um, long history where they so badly want to kill each other, but they just can't.
Right.
Um,
And you mean like he obviously this Joker in the story has sort of only just
yeah,
um, come to prominence. You know, he's only just first met Batman in this film,
yeah,
and then obviously the relationship is resolved by the end of the film. So it's not like, you know, they've been arch enemies for the past 10 years.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
and yeah, I guess that's a good way to look at it. I think Nolan tries to sort of develop that relationship with the whole hit me sequence.
Mm.
Um, and that's really all we get from it in the movie. But maybe that's enough because, yeah, like you said, it is the first sort of interaction between Batman and the Joker. Um, man, he would have been so good in The Dark Knight Rises. It's such a shame
Mm.
that he left too early
And
because, yeah, just would have been so
it,
good.
he was supposed to be in it, right? Like they did rework the script.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a shame. But yeah, I mean, this performance, it just, from Heath Ledger, I mean, I think it's the greatest performance of all time in any
Hmm.
film ever.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
because I look at this Joker and I cannot see
yeah.
the actor beneath it. And it's not just the makeup, because sometimes the makeup is more washed out
Hmm.
and you can see sort of skin tones coming through. And then we obviously see during the parade scene, we see Joker sort of without the mask on,
Yeah.
I guess you could say without the makeup. But I still do not see Heath Ledger. In fact, I said to you while we were watching it, if you asked me, and if I had no knowledge of the cast of this film, and you asked me who is playing the Joker, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Hmm.
I wouldn't
Hmm.
even know where to start.
Hmm. And that's just
He's
a testament to, and I guess this is the segue onto Heath Ledger. But it's just a testament to his acting, man. Like he is just such a phenomenal actor, and it's honestly a privilege to say that he comes from our country because wow, just such a phenomenal actor. And yeah, like you said, he really becomes one with the Joker in this movie. And I also said to you whilst we were watching it, it's really interesting to um, watch the clips on YouTube where they pin the scene right beside the script, so you can sort of watch the script roll by as the scene
mm,
unfolds, and just what Heath Ledger does with the lines and how he manipulates them and puts his own spin on them. It's just phenomenal, man. Like and even the little things he does, like just slapping people in the face or
mm,
spitting on people, like you know that that's him improvising on set, and yeah, it's just so great to watch every single time.
yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a sort of immortal performance. You know,
Mm.
it's obviously Joaquin Phoenix's Joker was fantastic, but I think everyone, you know, while that was so good and, you know, he got Best Actor and everything, I don't think Joaquin Phoenix would have gotten Best Actor if Heath Ledger had not won supporting actor, if that makes sense. Like him winning that Oscar was such a integral part of the superhero genre becoming a legitimate genre,
Mm.
and saying, oh, these comic book films, they're not just stupid films like the old Superman and the old Batman with Michael Keaton and George Clooney and whatever. They're not just stupid toy commercials. We
Yeah.
can actually take these comic books and adapt them into serious stories, and we deserve critical acclaim for those films. So
Mm.
I think his performance did so much for Batman fans, for Joker fans, for superhero fans in general.
It's kind of like the saying, Heath Ledger walked so Joaquin Phoenix could run.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Mm.
absolutely it. Let's talk about Aaron Eckhart, because I think he's one of the most underappreciated parts of
For
this film.
sure,
Wouldn't you say?
for sure, man. He is, and I said this to you whilst we were watching it. Like, what is Nolan doing? Not hiring this guy again?
Mm,
He isn't dead,
yeah.
is he?
No, no, he's not. No, I think he's. I think it's quite reasonable that he just took the paycheck and retired.
Oh, is he retired?
I mean, he's been in a few things. He's been in a few, like he was in Olympus Has Fallen in 2013. Like he was in Midway recently, 2019. He was in Sully 2016. But this is his big role. He hasn't really risen to prominence. I mean, he's been in
He
a
did
few
have a
rom
movie this
coms.
year,
Was it good?
Muzzle. It's not out yet, but
He looks like he's doing a lot of C grade action films.
yeah, yeah, he,
Um,
he is, isn't he?
but I don't understand that, because his performance to me is also Oscar worthy for Best Supporting Actor. It may not be. I think he's overshined, or just his thunder was stolen. You know, by Heath Ledger, if that makes sense. Like if Heath Ledger's performance wasn't that good, everyone would be talking about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But because Heath Ledger was just doing something completely insane with
Yeah.
his performance, no one just appreciated Aaron Eckhart, because he is so damn good. So
He
damn good.
really is, isn't he? And it's a really well written character. Um, Obviously, people have flaws with the fact that he really is only Two Face for a minute portion of this movie, but um, I kind of view um, the Joker, um, Batman, um, and Aaron Eckhart as like the three pillars of this movie. And there's a great comparison between um, the Dark Knight and then Aaron Eckhart, Two Face being like the White Knight, and there's like huge mention of that in the movie. Like they just keep sort of name dropping it, but um, just how the character unfolds and the progression of the character from this upstanding White Knight to this sort of man who's just been drained of all of his energy and all of his stature by the Joker. It's
Mm.
just such a phenomenal written character, man.
Yeah, it goes on a really drastic sort of journey,
Mm.
being this symbol of
Hope.
yeah, and non-corrupt, legitimate justice. He's
Yeah,
not Batman. He's not, committing crimes to fight crimes.
yeah,
He is doing the good thing. He's imposing the law. He's getting the criminals off the streets without putting on a mask.
mm.
And then you just see him get torn down by the Joker,
Yeah,
and it's a truly tragic element of the film, and
mm. Mm.
it's portrayed so well. I will say something that I don't like about The Dark Knight is the recasting of Rachel, because I'm a big fan of Batman Begins, and you laugh because you think I'm just saying it because Katie Holmes is very attractive and Maggie Gyllenhaal not so much, but I do believe that
She's a better actor.
Katie Holmes, well, not necessarily a better actor, but I think Katie Holmes was just a better Rachel. I think
Mm.
she pairs better with Christian Bale. She almost seems like the same age or slightly younger than Christian Bale.
Mm-hmm.
And Maggie Gyllenhaal looks a bit older. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you understand? Like
No,
what I'm saying?
I get where you're coming from, man. Like I totally do. Um, I haven't seen Batman Begins that much. I usually just skip Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises when watching
Blasphemy,
TDK. But
blasphemy.
look, people would disagree with you. But no, Katie Holmes and Christian Bale have a really good chemistry in Batman Begins, from what I remember.
Yeah, so it's a shame she doesn't get to sort of carry that over, carry
Mm,
that character, and I bet she regrets doing whatever she did instead of the Dark Knight,
yeah, for
because
sure.
it would have, it would have really immortalized her as well,
Yeah.
because Rachel's got a big role in this. But yeah, it's always tough recasting a character, but I think it's made worse by the fact that Maggie Gyllenhaal looks so much different
Mm,
than Katie Holmes. You can't really, it just doesn't blend together. If you want to recast a character to another character, I mean,
have to at
or
least
another
look the
actress,
same.
yeah, I just, but did they even act the same? Like, I get different vibes from the two characters in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. It's like watching two completely different characters.
I feel like I'm kind of I can't really comment on this. I just don't watch it enough.
You just don't watch, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
just don't watch Batman Begins.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, for me, it's legitimately my least favorite thing about the entire film is Maggie Gyllenhaal as Rachel Doss.
But
Um,
if you were to look at The Dark Knight just separately, like its own entity,
okay, yeah,
look,
yeah,
imagine if you
absolutely.
hadn't seen
I
Batman
think
Begins.
I think she's good, but I think the age thing is still. I still
Okay.
don't get really the chemistry
Mm,
uh, between Christian Bale and Maggie Gyllenhaal
mm,
as much as I did. Yeah, but I still don't quite get the chemistry.
yeah.
But Maggie Gyllenhaal's really good, and I think she really sells some of the emotional moments, like obviously when she's tied to the barrels,
Uh huh.
and
We've just gone
in
like straight spoilers.
uh, this movie's been out for a while, but I also think of the fundraising scene. She's great in
yeah.
that one,
Yeah.
so she does a good job, but I just don't think it was the right choice. And Nolan, you know, his female characters, they're a bit sketchy sometimes. They're not the most dependable. He's been great recently. I mean, Oppenheimer was fantastic. Emily Blunt, brilliant.
Mm,
But Maggie Gyllenhaal for this, yeah, just unfortunately, it's just something that drags the movie down just ever so slightly. It's just a minor nuance.
mm. She definitely has better chemistry with Aaron Eckhart in this movie.
Mm.
They pair really well together. But
It
look, I
might also be the fact that we don't actually see a lot of Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight,
yeah.
whereas we see a lot more of him in Batman Begins. So you actually see him just interact with Rachel more. You see Bruce Wayne interact with Rachel more,
Yeah, well, I
and
think that's
that's
also a fair comment. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's certainly something to do with it as well, and just goes to sort of worsen the recast really then and the effect of the recast, because we've had all this development and then suddenly it's a different person, and they're referencing their previous experience, and I'm like, hang on a second, did you guys really say that you were gonna wait for each other until Bruce no longer needed Batman? Like, was that really you? Because I don't get the same vibes as I did from that previous relationship
Yeah.
with Katie Holmes. So yeah, but let's draw a line there because there's nothing more to say about it. Let's talk about the visuals because my goodness, this is a great looking film. It's the first Batman film, but first superhero film to be filmed with IMAX cameras.
Hmm.
And the IMAX scenes are beautiful. Thankfully, Chris Nolan has continued to use IMAX throughout
Yep.
his career, and we got much more of it in The Dark Knight Rises. But this is a great looking film, isn't it?
Yeah. And look, whilst we're talking about the visuals, I've just got up here on my phone. Wally Feister is the cinematographer for this. Um, it looks like he stopped using this cinematographer, or it's a really bad way to word it, but um, he worked with him on Insomnia, so a lot of his earlier stuff and Memento, and then the whole Batman trilogy, um, Prestige and Inception. So it looked like he stopped using him after The Dark Knight Rises, and then he employed Hoyt van Hoytema, who I think began with Interstellar. Um,
Well, it seems like Wally um, Feister or whatever.
mhm.
It seems like he may have retired because his last film that he ever shot was The Dark Knight Rises
Oh, was
in
it?
2012. Yeah,
Oh,
and
okay.
so he shot The Prestige as well. So he was quite a frequent collaborator. Memento and Insomnia were also him,
Yep.
and and then it's sort of he hasn't done anything since. So maybe he moved into producing or something. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but yeah. So it seems like perhaps that might have been his decision because he hasn't done anything. You know,
Yeah. Look, and I think I do prefer Hoyt van Hoytema as Nolan's go-to cinematographer now. Like, I think he's just
which films did he do?
Hoyt van Hoytema.
Yeah.
Everything onward from
Oh,
uh,
okay.
the Dark Knight Rises. So
Right. Right.
Dunkirk and Oppenheimer, you name it, Interstellar, all of his recent ones. I just think he has such like seeing this Wally Feister do Interstellar. I don't think it would have been possible. Like Hoyt van Hoytema has such like a it's such a grand like he's got such grandness to his shooting, if that makes sense.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
whereas the guy who did the cinematography on this movie, it's sort of more um, toned down, grungy, sort of um, dark lenses, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get the feel, like in the Dark Knight trilogy, that it's very sort of almost shot like a documentary kind of way. Like it's
mm,
very, it, there's not a lot of very flashy cinematography, but we do have those really beautifully composed shots. But they're usually very steady, uh, slow moving
yeah,
landscape. Those types of very pretty shots.
yeah,
Um, but I'd say The Dark Knight Rises is a really grand film. But yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying there about Interstellar and even Tenet.
yeah,
Those sort of films that have just a greater level of scale. I think.
yeah, yeah. And that's not to discredit the cinematography on this movie at all, because I mean it's great, like you said, and there's fantastic establishing shots. Um, one shot comes to mind where we see Batman sort of in the rubble of a building, cape flowing. Like there's just really iconic shots
Mm.
planted throughout the whole movie. But um, yeah, I think I do prefer Nolan's collaborator now.
Yeah, I'd say me too. Me too. Absolutely. The sound. There's a brilliant score behind this film, and it obviously won the Oscar for sound editing. And
Yep.
so I think there are some really good sound effects used. Like I like the mix in this film. I love when Batman punches someone; you can really feel like the force behind it. Like there's a good bassy sound when
Yeah.
Batman just turns around and just clocks one of the criminals in the face.
Yeah.
It's almost like just a really hard mat, just
Yeah.
going like just slamming him. Uh, just brilliant stuff, and you really feel the force behind it.
I do
And
think um, we mentioned a lot that Nolan's mixing is like really terrible, but
oh,
this
it's
might.
terrible for watching on a TV.
But I think
Absolutely.
this is so much better than like his more recent stuff. Like the sound mixing on this is so much better.
I mean, yeah, I'd have to rewatch Tenet and stuff because Tenet's the worst culprit of them all. But it's really tough to watch Nolan's films when you are living with other people
Yeah.
because you want to hear the dialogue because it's a Nolan film and the dialogue's really important and some of the best material in the film is just dialogue
Yeah.
and so you want to hear that so you've got to turn the sound up during those quiet dialogue scenes, and then oh, watch out, explosion, Joker's shown up, and
Yeah.
then the sound just goes through the roof, and
And then
it's
Hans
just
Zimmer's going like crazy.
yeah. And Nolan's just like, yes, I love all of those things. Turn them up to 100. So it's but then again, you know, that cinema experience when you go to see a Nolan film is so good.
Yeah.
And if you, it's like oftentimes if I'm watching a film by myself, I just wear headphones, and the experience, being able to actually just leave the volume remote alone
Mm.
and enjoy those sort of loud action scenes is really, really fantastic.
Mm.
So I guess if you have no further thoughts, we'll talk about the score later on.
Mm-hmm.
But just to briefly say, where does this sort of rank in your? Obviously, this is your favorite film, but is this your favorite soundtrack of all time?
Ooh, that's a hard question.
Because we have the goat Hans Zimmer, and then we
Yeah.
also have James Newton Howard, I believe.
Yep.
And
Damn,
he's
that's a
done
hard question.
some great things. So that's a
Has he done
incredible.
Pirates, or am I thinking of? No, he hasn't.
No, I know. I think that might be another. That's like Klaus Badelt and Hans Zimmer.
Oh
And
wow, he has done some really big movies.
yeah, so Nightcrawler, Hunger Games, did a bit of Harry Potter stuff, Collateral, King Kong.
Collateral, Space Jam. This guy. Someone asked him. He's like, you know what, James? What are you gonna do when you become a composer? And he's like, everything.
Yeah, he's done all sorts of things.
Green Lantern, Jungle Cruise. What is this guy's?
The Fugitive with Harrison Ford.
Oh,
So
great
he's
movie,
been
by the
around.
way.
Is it? I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's such a good movie. Yeah, really weird catalog here, but no, look, it's really hard to say whether this is my favorite soundtrack of all time. It's definitely up there. I'm just trying to think of what Hans Zimmer's done with Nolan. Oh man, that's hard.
Let me see.
I feel like I listened to this one a lot more than anything else from Hans Zimmer. Like, I don't really listen to the Interstellar soundtrack all that much. I really only listen to a few songs on that.
Yeah, I mean June. And that's not Nolan, is it? Hans Zimmer, Nolan. Okay, so you got obviously Inception. You know, Time from Inception. That's a big one.
Mm.
But
yeah, no, I think I can confidently say this is my most listened to Nolan Hans Zimmer soundtrack.
Yeah.
If not, oh, but then you have Lord of the Rings. No, okay, definitive decision. Not my favorite soundtrack. Lord of the Rings. You just can't beat that.
Yeah, and that's by Howard Shore. So I was thinking it might have been the same Howard, but it's not. That's a different guy. Because obviously this is by James Newton Howard, and the Lord of the Rings is Howard Shore.
Yep.
Right. So
yeah,
not the same guy. But yeah, Hans Zimmer. I mean, this has got to be one of his best.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, if not his best.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll dive into some scenes, and then the discussion will just take off from there, I imagine. But yeah, I mean, let's start with the first sort of opening scene. We have the heist, the Joker heist, just an incredible action scene. But then also, what takes it from just, and this can be applied to the entire film, what takes it just from a good action movie to just one of the best films of all time is just the intelligence and the wittiness of the scene. You know, you have all these criminals going into this bank to try to take the money. Now, usually, if you just let Christopher Nolan do that, he could make it a really entertaining crime scene.
Yeah.
But he introduces the Joker's goons, and guess what? the Joker's goons have been told, okay, so you're going to be paired with this guy. As soon as as soon as the guy that you're paired with finishes his work, off him, you know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
one less share.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, that sounds good. Because the criminals are so stupid that they don't think, oh, maybe someone's going to offer me as soon as I'm finished my work. They're just so dumb, which is, exactly how a lot of criminals are. They're just, they're not very intelligent people. That's why they're criminals. And so you introduce that, but then you introduce the Joker. The whole time they're thinking, oh, you heard of this guy, the Joker? I hear he wears clown makeup. Oh, sounds like a freak to me. Or, they're just having this conversation about the Joker, setting up this mystery around the guy. But then the whole time, the camera focuses on one of the goons, just one of the goons going about their business, and then it's revealed that, oh, that's the Joker. That's the guy they've been talking about. You hear the rumors. That's him. He takes off the mask. You have the big reveal and the music cue. It's just brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really great how it unfolds, and it's even better that it's all shot like practically, like when they have like the zip lines going from one building to the other. It just looks really good when it's on IMAX. Um, Even on our 1080p television experience. But yeah, it's just really clever filmmaking, um, and it would be interesting to watch the movie for the first time and see whether you pick up if it is the Joker,
Mm.
because yeah, nothing really gives it away.
No, no. I mean, the camera, if you
It's the
like,
camera that gives it
the
away.
camera lingers. The camera lingers
Mm,
on one of the minions, and the minion doesn't talk. So you're thinking, oh, why is this minion's a bit mysterious? What's he doing?
mm,
But you absolutely wouldn't put it together until he takes off the mask. That's a great reveal.
yeah.
But then it's also very smart because you're getting some much needed exposition about the Joker.
Mm,
He's just introduced to the character through these rumors that the criminals are just telling each other, and you learn through the concoction of this plan that the Joker is a force to be reckoned with. He is a mastermind
yeah.
at unleashing chaos.
Yeah.
This plan that he has is so intricate and so well thought out, and he's counting on the criminals being so just so
Ignorant.
stupid,
Yeah.
yeah, ignorant, and just mean spirited and just evil. He's counting on these people being evil, and they are. And so he exploits that. And he tries to do that with ordinary civilians and prisoners at the end of the film,
Mm,
but it doesn't work.
mm,
So, it just gives you such a great insight into the character in just
yeah.
the first couple of minutes.
Yeah. You really wonder why Joker killed off all of his goons. Like, what's the point of that? Because he's never been, and it's clear in the movie that he's never been in it for money. Um,
Mm.
it's more so sending a message. So I think you could kind of interpret it that the Joker just kind of wants to work alone. He wants to kill off his goons on that one mission, and then get a whole new batch on the next mission.
Yeah, they're just a means to an end. It's
Yeah,
not about actually building a team of criminal masterminds to, go and steal all this money so then they can go surfing forever.
yeah,
That's not what he's about.
yeah.
He's about sending a message, as he says.
Mm.
It's not about the money.
It's about the message. Yeah, I mean
So
it's
yeah, and I would say as well, like it's a pretty ballsy move by Chris Nolan to not have Batman just show up
mm.
in this scene, because
Oh
you'd
yeah,
think, opening scene of a Batman film, you open with a heist. You're like, okay, Batman's about to come in. The Joker's there, but Batman's going to come in. He's going to punch him, and yeah, that's going to be our opening scene. But no, Joker gets away with it.
yeah, yeah. He kind of teases it with the whole oh, that's funny. It dialed a private number. Um, and then you're like, okay, that's Batman. Batman's going to show up, and then
Yeah, yeah,
he just
yeah.
doesn't end
So
up showing up.
so it does put a bit of tension in the air. You're like, oh, but it's those really little details like that if you blink, you'll miss it.
Mm.
You know, if you're not engaged, you're not going to get that little nugget that Gotham City has such a over reliance on Batman that even the banks,
Yeah,
if the banks are being robbed, they don't call the police, they
they
call
call
Batman.
Batman. Yeah, it's so funny, isn't it?
So it's like a piece of world building as well, but it's just a
Yeah,
throwaway line.
yeah.
You know, it's not integral to the plot. It doesn't create a storyline that's resolved later on.
Mm.
It's just a really interesting piece of world building that they just throw in there.
Yeah,
I mean, the writing is just the writing's the best part of this film. I mean,
yeah.
you've got the performances, everything else does its job, A plus,
Mm.
but the writing is so damn good,
For sure.
so damn
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's in Hans Zimmer has a great accompany piece to go with this scene,
Mm.
and I think I've told you this before, but I'll say it anyway, and I'll say it um, for our viewers that might not know this, but when the Joker takes off his mask, the theme switches from the key of D to the key of C, which obviously is DC. It's just
Mm.
really clever, like, and it's small stuff like that that you just won't find in any other film, and that's why Hans Zimmer's the goat.
Absolutely, he is the undisputed best composer of all time.
Oh, for
I mean,
sure.
John Williams. I mean, John Williams is great,
Yeah,
but if you take the amount of quality, you know, because you could argue that, you know, John Williams, you know, Jaws, Star Wars, all these things, you know, Jurassic Park, you know, individually they might be better than anything Hans Zimmer's ever done, but Hans has just done absolute bangers
mm,
on
mm. Yeah,
like 3 times a year for the last decade.
yeah, yeah.
You know, it's incredible.
I'm gonna say something controversial. Like,
Oh, here
yeah,
we go.
John Williams is great composer, but he's sort of like a one-trick pony. Like, you listen to a theme of John Williams, and you know it's a John Williams theme.
He's very self-referential, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. Um, like, you could look at something from Star Wars and then something from Indiana Jones,
Yeah, it's the
and
same
they
theme.
kind of sound similar. But you take anything from Hans Zimmer and like just like the nuance and detail that he
Yeah,
packs into every single soundtrack is just phenomenal. Like,
yeah. I mean, compare Dune to
mm,
Interstellar. You know, they're both sci-fi movies.
they're so
There's,
different.
they're both scenes in space. You know, they both have, you know, large-scale spaceships and all that sort of jazz, and it's the
Oh yeah,
completely different sounds.
yeah.
So yeah. Um, I mean, what are some other key scenes for you in the film? You know, what are your favorite scenes when you think, you know, oh, I think The Dark Knight is a great film. What scene pops into your head?
Ah man, there's so many. Um, just
I
sort of
suppose the
going.
interrogation scene.
Yeah, I mean that's a standout. That if not the best in the whole movie. Um, yeah, let's talk
Yeah.
about the interrogation scene. Um,
You have the car chase before that as well.
yeah, or even the car chase. I mean that's also really great. Did you want to talk about the car chase?
I mean, I just love the Batmobile and the Batpod.
Yeah,
You know, I think the Batman costume is
could use some work.
yeah. I think there's more to be desired from the Batman costume, especially, you know, now that we've seen Ben Affleck's Batman v Superman costume. I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
Mm.
It does not get better than that.
Well, I would
Uh,
argue it would, but
oh, because Robert
I think he has the
Pattinson's.
best. I do
Yeah,
think
I
he
mean,
does.
yeah, they're all different styles, and I guess, you know, what I do like about this suit, this Batman suit, is that it does fit into the world nicely. Like,
Yeah,
it does feel like a something that Bruce Wayne would have access to.
yeah,
It's not just like a comic book. You know, Ben Affleck's is very comic book. You're not really sure what the materials are. He's got a bulletproof mask. I don't know how that works, and so there are elements like that are a bit fantastical,
Mm.
but this suit is very grounded. But I just wish that they tweaked a few things in the cowl region. I think the nose is too big. I
Mm-hmm.
think the ears could be shaped a bit more vertically, and I think they could be a bit longer, perhaps. I think the suit looks really good in certain scenes, and it
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't look good in other scenes. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really mixed bag. But I will say the vehicles, so the Bat Pod and the
Mm-hmm.
Batmobile, which we see in this film, excellent. I
Oh
love the
yeah.
motorcycle,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think just to jump on the bandwagon of talking about the suit, it, I know what you mean when you say like it fits into the world because it's a very like tactile suit,
Mm.
um, and it's sort of more utility based than anything else. Like you can see like why Christian Bale, or I should say Bruce Wayne rather, um, uses this suit. Like this is it's very functional. It's a very functional suit, whereas something like Affleck is just like straight up badass and it just looks cool.
And it's
Um,
very intimidating as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
And
like
I'll
it's
say that about Pattinson's as well. It's pretty intimidating too.
mm,
And I feel like if I was a criminal and I saw, if I had a selection of, which Batman was going to come down a
let's
dark
rank them.
alleyway and try and beat me up, first of all, I would say send Michael Keaton because I'll beat him up. I'll beat him up. And then, send Val Kilmer and George Clooney and all those idiots.
Yeah,
But let's talk about the real Batman, the serious Batman. You've got Christian Bale, Ben Affleck, and Robert Pattinson.
yeah.
If Christian Bale shows up, I give myself, a 40% chance that I can get out of that situation. That I
Forty
can go
percent.
40%. If
That's
if
crazy.
if Ben Affleck's Batman shows up, I'm as
It,
good
it,
as dead.
it's
We
zero,
all
bro.
are.
It's zero.
You're literally gonna get killed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I mean,
you
that's the
have
origins of the whole suit, right? Like, it's you're comparing apples and oranges here. Ben Affleck's Batman is like, where's it taken from? It's taken from The Dark Knight Returns, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. So it's more of that brute
Yes, yeah,
Batman,
yeah.
whereas Nolan's Batman is sort of more. Um, well, Bruce Wayne is more skinny. He's more lean.
Mm.
He's not as brute force as Affleck. But even if you compare um, Robert Pattinson and Christian Bale, I think Robert Pattinson's Batman is a lot more um, terrifying and
Oh,
menacing.
absolutely. I think the thing about Robert Pattinson's Batman, which is so good, is that you always feel like he's living on the edge, like of his emotions,
Yeah, yeah.
like that he's always about to just lose the plot and just pummel your face in, and because he's so angry and so hurt by what happened to him, and so he has that sort of dark undertone. Whereas I don't get that from Christian Bale's Batman.
Mm,
I get less of the sort of I'm Bruce Wayne and my life is really tough, and I'm a tragic hero and I'm about to kill someone, but I have to restrain myself. I don't really get that vibe
mm,
from Christian Bale's Batman, but I do think that Batman in the comics or in animation or whatever, he's always had a element of intimidation by wearing the suit. He's trying to intimidate the criminals.
yeah.
And I think in Batman Begins, he's really intimidating. But I think the suit in particular in this film just takes a bit of that out. A bit of that out. I'm trying
Mm,
my best to nitpick this film because otherwise it would just be us saying it's so good the whole time.
yeah, yeah.
And it is so good. But I do want to raise those different things. It's not an issue because the movie is fantastic. But if you take the suit in isolation, I think it could have been better in just a
Mm,
few areas.
mm. I just think it's too clean. Like it just looks like it hasn't been in battle like before.
Right, right.
You take Robert Pattinson's and like it's all beaten up and
Mm.
broken
Yeah,
and
bullet holes and stuff.
yeah, yeah. And they're sort of the same suit in a way that they're both really like tactile and they're both utility based and they're both functional. But Robert Pattinson's just does it so much better. Maybe not
Yes.
in the cow region, but
Yes.
he's got a
Yeah.
massive forehead in that movie.
Yeah, and he just exposes his entire chin below
Yeah.
his nose.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they all have their pros and cons, but yeah, I mean, so the car chase in particular, because that's what we were starting to talk about, and then we got a bit sidetracked.
Yeah.
The car chase is so good because it's all practical, or it's miniatures, or whatever Nolan did. It looks so real, and I love. There's a few shots right before some chaos happens where it's just some nice landscape or helicopter shots, and there's sort of the sound quiets down, and you see the patrol of cars, and you think, oh, something bad is about to happen. But the film's just so quiet. It's like the calm before the storm.
Mm.
And then you see explosions. Joker comes in. He's having so much fun. He's grabbing a bazooka.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And then you have the Batpod stuff. Brilliant, brilliant. I love it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good, isn't it? I thought you were talking when you said the car chase. I thought you were talking about the introduction of Batman with Cillian Murphy's Scarecrow.
Oh no, I was talking
Yeah.
like the hit me stuff. It ends
Yeah.
with the hit me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a phenomenal scene as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings us then to the interrogation scene where Gordon goes in to chat with the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
And by this stage, you know, Harvey Dent's been taken off. He didn't make it home. Rachel's been taken. Batman's standing behind the Joker, but no one knows that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except Jim Gordon, I think.
Yeah.
But that scene is just so special because it's just two characters in a room talking.
Mm.
And it's probably the best scene in the film.
Yeah. It probably is. Like, yeah. I want to liken it to the Heat diner
Ooh,
sequence.
that's a great comparison. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Like it's just two like phenomenal actors just going at one another, just like giving it their all. And just what Heath Ledger did in this scene to really encapsulate the Joker was phenomenal. Like, I don't know if you've heard this, you probably have, but he told Christian Bale to like hit him in the head so he could really become one with the Joker. Yeah, just the way that it all unfolds, and this is really sort of the turning point of the movie where Joker sort of gets the upper hand. And you might not realize it because yeah, Joker's in custody and it looks like his plan isn't coming to fruition, but all along that's actually what Joker wanted to do. He wanted to be in prison there.
And let's not forget, like, Jim Gordon faked his own death to then get Joker into custody.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he went through all of that stuff. You know, he let his family believe that he was dead for like, you know, probably half a day.
Yeah.
And just to get Joker into custody, but then the whole time Joker was meaning to be caught.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, if you're Jim Gordon, that's got to infuriate you.
Joker always, this is just something I've noticed, but Joker always has the upper hand in this movie. Theoretically, the Joker won. Like,
well, until the very, very end.
Or even still, I mean, he probably still won. Like, he's
no, because
he won against Batman at least.
I think if you say that the Joker, I don't think you can say that because at the end of the film, Batman has to make that decision to become the martyr.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
That to make sure that the Joker didn't win. But then if you take that, if you accept that ending, and then the film ends, and you go, and they lived happily ever after, the Joker loses. But as we see in The Dark Knight Rises, the information about Harvey Dent actually gets released and causes chaos later on. So it's sort of built on lies, and those lies to sort of cover up what Harvey Dent did and, you know, say that, oh, he was the hero, Batman killed all these people. You know, when it's brought to light, that's not actually the case and that everyone's just lying to the public. that causes huge chaos. So in a way, Joker did win when we get to The Dark Knight Rises, but I think if you take this film in particular, the Joker is in control the whole time, and he does beat Batman at the end. He outsmarts him, and that's why Rachel dies, because Batman's not good enough. He fails. But at the very end, the crux of this movie is the theme of, you either die a hero or you live
Oh
long
yeah.
enough to see yourself become a villain. But Batman realizes that he has to be more than just
I can do those things.
yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The Joker cannot win, he says.
Yeah.
And so I think the Joker loses because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think he also loses because of what happens with the prisoner boats. The classic prisoner scenario of, do you blow up the prisoners, or do you blow up the civilians, or do you just not blow up either of them?
Yeah.
I think he loses in that specific scenario as well, because he is trying to show Batman that the citizens are evil.
Yeah.
But as Batman says, they've just shown you that it's full of people ready to believe in good.
I guess it just depends which way you look at it. Like, yeah, the proper answer is probably that the Joker lost. Um, but it's really hard to give up the fact that the Joker kind of had the one up on Batman the whole time. Like,
Absolutely.
even till the
Absolutely.
very end, like
He took Batman to school.
Batman obviously didn't want to take the fall for
No,
Harvey
no,
Dent,
he had to.
but
He
he
was
had
forced to
to,
make that decision. Yeah.
and the Joker made him do that. So in a way, when I say the Joker did win, he sort of won against Batman.
Mm.
But
I see that perspective. Yeah.
yeah, it just depends which way you look at it, because
No, I agree. I agree with everything you said. Like, I don't
mm,
think we're on different points or different perspectives there. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, or interesting nuance, to be like, Batman was forced to make that decision to become the martyr. He didn't just.
he
That's
didn't
not a
willingly
thing.
do it.
Yeah, yeah. He didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
He
Mm,
was forced to. But then again, by making that decision, he wins in the end.
mm, mm,
Because he protects Gotham.
mm. The way that I would look at this movie, though, um, is that the main conflict and the heart of the movie is Batman handing over the reins and the protection of um, Gotham City to Harvey Dent. Like he continually says throughout the movie that Harvey Dent is what Gotham needs. They need someone that they can look at and someone that they can know who it is and picture them
Mm.
as the watchful protector. Whereas Batman's just this sort of vigilante. Um, and when Batman takes the fall for Harvey Dent, he sort of he keeps that going, and he allows Harvey Dent to be that hope that the city needs. Um, that's how I would kind of look at the movie. Um, but yeah, there's also the perspective of the conflict between Batman and the Joker, and that's why I say that they're the three pillars of the movie, because they really are. That's where the whole conflict lies, is those three people.
Yeah. So those three people being Batman, Joker, and Harvey Dent.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about Harvey Dent then,
Mm-hmm.
because he comes into the final scene as well. Um, People say that he wasn't Two-Face for very long, and he didn't get sort of a lot of development. But do you buy the fall of Harvey Dent? Do you buy that this character that we see is so good at the start of the movie? Do you see him get sort of teared down?
I think there's always like a slight unbelievability there that someone who cares this much about Gotham can go from being that sort of person to holding a child at gunpoint. Like, it's kind of like, can that really happen? but I guess he was just attached to Rachel that much that
Mm.
yeah, he just kind of lost it all. Maybe if it was over the span of a few movies, that could become more believable. But
Mm.
it's not a detriment to how the film operates for me. Like I still watch the film, and I still feel like that transformation of the character is tragic, and that's the whole
Yeah,
point of it is tragic.
absolutely. And I
It's
think there's a middle point for his character, and that is when the parade scene is just concluding, and he
mm,
finds David Delsmalchian's character,
mm-hmm,
the crazy Joker sidekick or Joker employee, and he finds him in a ambulance, and he looks around and he sees that no one's in the ambulance, and he says, "You know what? I'm just going to take you to the middle of nowhere, and I'm going to interrogate you myself."
mm.
And that's kind of showing that while he is this white knight, he does have that sort
Two
of
Face.
aggressive side of him. Yeah, yeah.
He's always
So,
been
but
Two Face. Like Two Face never really began with the death of Rachel. Um, and it's continually mentioned throughout the movie that his nickname was Two Face, and I guess that's where that comes from. Is his uh, good cop, bad cop
right,
personality
right, right.
um, that he has, where he just sort of loses it at points. And there's a great moment where Batman shows up whilst Harvey Dent
Mm,
is interrogating David Dalsmartian, and he's like, um, he's a paranoid schizophrenic. What do you think you're going to get out of this? And,
mm,
and and that's sort of Batman telling Harvey Dent that you can't be this person. Um, what you need to be is this white knight for Gotham. You can't be this
yeah, you
Two
have to be
Face.
legitimate. You have to be
Yeah, you have
legitimate.
to do it the right way. You have to uphold justice. You can't be a vigilante like myself because that's what Gotham needs.
Yeah,
Um, and that's just a great moment.
yeah. I love when he shows up and he's like, "Would you really leave a life's man to chance?"
Mm,
And just that dialogue exchange, yeah, between Batman realizing that he is not a legitimate ray of hope for Gotham. He's not the absolute final resolution or solution to Gotham's problems.
mm,
He needs the actual establishment, the government, to stand up and be legitimate and fight crime.
mm,
And he knows that, as a masked vigilante, he can only do so much. He
yeah.
can't wipe the streets of crime. So, yeah, it's really interesting, and it creates this tension throughout the film because you know how important Harvey is, and then to just see him get reduced to
Mm,
this crazy madman and eventually become this horrific Two-Face character.
mm. Joker kind of preys on that vulnerability that he has. Joker sort of realized that from the start that Harvey Dent isn't really who he makes out to be. And he notices that, and that's why they call him an agent of chaos, because he just wants to, as Alfred would say, some people just want to watch the world burn.
Oh,
Um,
that's a great scene and great
yeah,
quote as
yeah,
well.
great quote. Um, and that's what the Joker does. That's his whole um, identity, is that he's an agent of chaos. He just wants to mess stuff up. I'm trying to censor myself there, but that's what he does. And he preyed on the vulnerability of Harvey Dent, and he really destroyed Gotham from the inside.
Mm, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just the themes that are presented in this film, of good versus evil, and the legitimate um, state-sponsored authority, and then you have Batman, personal responsibility, and it's just then you have surveillance taken into account, with Batman doing the sonar of every citizen in Gotham's phone, and Lucius Fox is like, whoa, hang on a second,
Yeah.
You're trying to fight the criminals, and I understand that, but at what cost?
Yeah.
You're going to spy on everyone. That's not in my job description.
Mm.
And so it deals with so many great themes, and it packages them together so
Mm.
well.
Mm. Mm.
And it's just have the good versus evil. With the some men just want to watch the world burn. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I mean, remarkable stuff.
Yeah.
Remarkable stuff. I
Yeah.
cannot believe that a human being just wrote this film one
Yeah.
day.
Two.
Just two human beings, two brothers, no less. Just got together and said, "Oh, you know what? Let's do a really good Batman film.
Yeah.
Actually, let's do the best Batman film ever made. In fact, let's
Actually,
just do one
let's
of the
do the
best
best
films."
film ever
Yeah,
made.
yeah. And because
Yeah.
Nolan's brother doesn't write a lot of stuff anymore, does he? Like,
No,
is he?
I think Nolan's going solo the past few films.
Yeah, interesting. Because I'm not aware of, his brother, and sort of whether he works outside of Christopher Nolan's sort of
Well, Chris
space.
Nolan has his own production company. I think it's Syncope. I think
Yeah, so
that's how you.
Jonathan Nolan worked with Chris on The Prestige, The Dark Knight Rises, Memento, The Dark Knight, and
I know.
Interstellar.
Yeah, he did Interstellar, but from there on out, I don't think he has.
No, that was the last one.
Yeah, yeah. I
Interesting.
wonder what happened there. He might have retired. Who knows? I really hope there isn't any bad blood between them because they are just such like a dynamic duo, man. Like
Mm.
and maybe it's safe to say that Jonathan Nolan is the heart of these incredible scripts.
Oh, it's also
Because
important to, sorry to cut you off, it's also important to shout out David S. Goyer. He was also one of the writers. He was the producer of The Night House, which is
oh
a film we discussed on this podcast. So, yeah, shout out to him. He obviously wrote Man of Steel as well. So he was one of the Nolan team members at
yeah,
one
yeah,
stage.
yeah. Well, Nolan has his team members, doesn't he?
Hmm.
Um,
Sorry, what were you saying?
yeah, like maybe it's safe to say that Jonathan Nolan is the true mastermind behind everything. Um, but then you look at something like um, Oppenheimer, where Chris Nolan went solo on it, and um, not to discredit any of the other writers there, but um, Jonathan Nolan wasn't a part of that film, and look how that turned out. That's arguably his second best, if not his best, from many people's perspectives. Um, but yeah, just the the writing that comes from these two brothers is just sensational.
Yeah, it's what makes the film.
Mm.
It's you can get great actors in your film, you can get great costumes, great cinematography, all those things.
Mm.
And a lot of Zack Snyder films have all those combinations, but they're all let down in one
Yeah.
sort of department, and that is the writing.
Mm.
And if you don't get a good script, you don't get a good movie,
Yeah,
unfortunately. And Nolan knocked it out of the park here.
for
The
sure.
Nolan Bros and David S. Goyer.
For sure.
Take a bow.
Whilst you were talking about the themes of this movie, I think that might be my favorite part of it. Irrespective of all the, like you said, the costumes and the dialogue and the humor and the performances, the the thematic undertones of this movie are absolutely sensational. Like there is so many themes going on at the same time, and the way that Nolan just juggles all of them is really great. Like there's love, there's tragedy, there's some men just want to watch the world burn. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Um, Good versus evil, all of those themes that you mentioned before. Um, it it's just an incredible um, juggling game going on here, and that's probably my favorite part of the movie is the themes.
I'd have to agree. It's what makes this film in particular. And, there are some themes in The Dark Knight Rises as well that are very, very serious and political in nature, you could say, and yeah, so. But these two films, The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, they are very theme heavy, and it works in their favor. Sometimes you walk out of a film and you're like, well, that was good, but what was it really about? I'm not really sure. I think it was just a stupid
Ratatouille.
I think it was just a stupid car movie, or I think it was just a movie about a green man and his donkey. But
There's always a mention of Shrek, bro. Always.
nah, Shrek has great themes, man.
What's the
Not
theme
bash
of
on Shrek.
Ratatouille?
Workplace health and safety is required in all restaurants.
Chef. Yeah. I don't think Ratatouille really has a theme. Love? I don't know. What's the theme of Cars?
I remember because we had an in-depth discussion. I think I hit you with that question. Like,
Yeah, we did.
What is the theme of Ratatouille? And you struggled.
I struggled, man. I still struggle.
But then, if you think about like Toy Story and Cars, in Toy Story it's like a lot of friendship and
Yeah.
and then Cars it's sportsmanship and
Yeah.
just all these things, and Finding Nemo is family and it just. But then you have Ratatouille and it's just a rat making soup,
Oh, we're going down this rabbit hole again.
Okay, let's get the podcast back on track. Let's go. Let's try and nitpick The Dark Knight, and let's have a look at some common criticisms from some internet idiots, and discuss why they're terribly wrong. We'll start off with some of the nitpicks that I put down.
Yeah.
So I think the Joker hospital mask situation with Harvey Dent.
It was so funny, bro.
So Harvey Dent is looking at this nurse.
Yeah.
And the nurse is wearing Joker makeup.
Yeah.
And a mask. And as soon as the nurse reveals or takes off the mask, oh my gosh, it's the Joker.
Yeah.
I think he could have put it together a bit quicker than that.
Yeah.
So just a bit of a nitpick there from Harvey Dent. He's a very intelligent person. It's not like he lost an eye. He's clearly got both eyes. So yeah, that's a bit of a nitpick. Another one I have is the police, and I only noticed this on this watch, but just briefly after the interrogation scene, the police officer stands inside the cell to guard the Joker. Now, I'm not entirely sure if the police know how cells work, but it usually works as you put the prisoner inside the cell and they can't get out.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do from the outside except just unlocking the door.
Yeah.
That's going to let the person escape. But they put a policeman inside the cell for the Joker to obviously, get a rise out of him and then get some glass and hold it to his neck and unlock the door. So there's a bit of a nitpick there. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, I mean, kind of a glaring nitpick, isn't it? Like it's so essential to like the main storyline. It's like if this guy wasn't there, then
they need the Joker to get out. Like the plot needs the Joker to get out. But I mean, could they have done it another way? Like, could they have had one of the police officers
just be corrupt?
Just be corrupt and just let him in, or so bit of a nitpick. But another nitpick would be the Batman voice, the Christian Bale voice, ready to believe in good.
Yeah.
It gets a bit ridiculous, especially towards the end when Batman's quite tired.
Yeah. And he's on the top of the building.
Ready to believe in good. Yeah, so it gets a bit ridiculous. But what are your thoughts on the Batman voice?
It's never something that really annoys me. It's more of just a funny thing for me. Like it just emulating the voice and just reading all the iconic lines in his voice. Yeah, obviously it's pretty dumb. Like, I think someone like Affleck or Robert Pattinson does it a lot better. And obviously they had to learn from Christian Bale's mistake. But it's not a movie killer for me. Like, I don't look at The Voice and I'm like, oh my god, this movie sucks because of The Voice. Like, it's just what it is, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just sometimes it's really good. I thought it was really good in Batman Begins,
Mm-hmm.
and it just gets progressively worse
Yeah,
throughout the trilogy.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I think it works well sometimes.
yeah.
Other times, not so much. It can be a bit ridiculous.
It's particularly bad towards the end of this movie where he's like, "But the Joker cannot win."
Yeah, I think it's because Bale's trying to sound exhausted,
Yeah, yeah,
and it just sort of makes it more of a
yeah,
more
yeah,
raspy, like he's about to like spit some mouthwash out. He's just sort of like gargling.
yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, it's sort of a fun thing to poke fun at. It's not important.
No,
It doesn't ruin my enjoyment of the movie at all.
yeah.
Speaking of ruining my enjoyment, let's take a look at some internet idiots and their
We're gonna
thoughts.
name and shame them.
Professional journalists
This
that
is
we will in fact
defamation.
name and shame. No, it's not defamation because it's all true, of course. If it's not true, it's our opinion. So I've compiled some common criticisms that I found online. We'll start with Sportskeeda, which is apparently it is a news place. Never heard of it, but we are looking at Anubhav Chowdhury's opinion on the Dark Knight trilogy because he says that the Dark Knight trilogy is overrated. Now, Jayden, do you want to read the first two paragraphs that I've highlighted?
Yeah, let's go. One of the major criticisms of the Dark Knight trilogy's storytelling is that it fails to push the boundaries of the superhero genre. I'm trying hard to get through this. While the films are undoubtedly well crafted, they are ultimately conventional in their storytelling approach. Just to preface, this is not me saying these words. The series I'm quoting someone, please. The series follows a predictable structure, featuring a new villain for Batman to defeat. This predictable formula means that the trilogy's plot becomes repetitive and lacks the freshness and innovation seen in other successful superhero franchises, like Marvel Cinematic Universe. When was this written, bro? That's what I want to know.
It was written in 2023.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Someone's being paid a big dollar to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Okay, so let's break it down. Do you think that The Dark Knight fails to push the boundaries of the superhero genre?
Hell no. It like defined the boundaries of the superhero genre.
It literally expanded the boundaries of the superhero genre.
It
Superhero
set
movies
like the
before this
golden
was stupid.
benchmark.
Yeah. It literally started the golden age of superhero storytelling.
Yeah.
Like,
it's so ignorant to make that comment, isn't it? And then just to put the Marvel Cinematic Universe on the end, like I just makes my blood boil, man. Like, who is this person?
Do you think that, the Dark Knight trilogy has a predictable structure featuring a new villain for Batman to defeat every time? Does that make the movies predictable?
What are you going to do without a main villain? Every MCU movie has a main villain. Yet you see this person talking about them being fresh and innovative. Like, what? At least Nolan has, like, some decency to do something with the villains. Like,
yeah, I mean, and it's such a simplification to say that just because there's one new villain for Batman to defeat. I mean, think of The Dark Knight Rises. You have Two-Face returning, you have Bane, and you have other villains sprinkled throughout. You have Ra's al Ghul, you have Talia al Ghul, all of these. Even in The Dark Knight, you have Joker, you have Two-Face,
Scarecrow.
You have Scarecrow as well, yeah. And, I mean, it's not just one villain.
Yeah.
That's what the MCU does. They just have one villain.
Yeah, yeah.
You just have Shang-Chi's got defeat his dad or whatever, and that's the only villain in the film.
Oh, just the
that is
ignorance.
conventional storytelling.
Yeah.
That is conventional. Okay, do you want to read the third highlighted paragraph there from this man?
Right here. One of the most significant criticisms of The Dark Knight is the series' deviation from the comic book's source material. While some fans appreciate the creative liberties taken by Christopher Nolan, others feel that the film strayed too far from the established lore. I can't really comment on this. I don't really know too much about the source material.
Yeah, well, it's to say that, a certain movie deviates from Batman's source material, but then not specify, in what particular manner,
Yeah.
is a very broad statement.
Mm.
Is this an adaptation of a graphic novel? No,
Yeah.
it's not. Is this a Batman film that takes the overarching themes of Batman and adapts them into a modern crime drama? Yes.
Mm.
Is it good? Yes. There you go. That's the two elements you need to do a good comic book movie adaptation.
It's just kind of a pathetic comment, isn't it? Like
No
he's just
characters are race swapped or used in a manner that is in contravention to in contradiction to the source material.
Mm.
It's not disrespectful to the source material.
Yeah.
You have characters like Lucius Fox that are in the source material.
Yeah.
Alfred. It's not like they've fundamentally changed things. It's just like they haven't taken a comic book storyline and adapted it.
But Anub he's not, or he or she's not really making any comment here. Like they're just sort of acting as the mouthpiece for like all the criticisms of this movie.
One of the most common criticisms, like, come on, man, own it. If this is your opinion, that's your opinion.
Yeah, like what are you trying to say? What is the actual criticism here? Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to The Guardian, which is a place where comic book movie journalism goes to die. We have Alex Hess with an article titled "The Dark Knight: My Most Overrated Film."
Yeah, I don't give two shits. Alex Hess. Irrelevant.
Do you want to read the highlighted paragraph? It's the third paragraph there.
Yeah, right, yeah. None of this is to mention how bleakly humorless the whole thing. Are you absolutely kidding me? Bringing seriousness to the comic book movie is one thing. Draining it of all of its wit is another. Batman is never going to be clinking glasses, the fun-loving Ferris Bueller's of the world, but rarely has a big screen action hero operated so many high-powered vehicles with such joylessness. What? Did you watch the movie? Are you... This can't be real. Who is this person?
I want to take that last bit. Never has an action hero operated so many high-powered vehicles with such joylessness. This is Bruce Wayne. He does not like the fact that he's rich. He doesn't actually enjoy being a fake playboy and having Lamborghinis and stuff.
Mm.
I liken it to James Bond, Daniel Craig's James Bond. When he wears a suit, he doesn't look at himself in the mirror. He's like, oh yeah, I love this suit. He doesn't give a shit. He just puts on a suit because he has to, and off he goes. Yeah.
Mm.
That's how Bruce Wayne treats his Lamborghinis.
That's a great comparison.
So to say, oh, Batman wasn't smiling when he was driving his Lamborghini.
I think Alex Hess has watched one too many Marvel movies. But where is the fun? Where is the humor?
What do you say to the comment, draining it all of wit is another? So is this movie drained of wit?
Are you absolutely kidding me? This movie is hilarious. Like, there is so many good scenes in this movie. Look, irrespective of just the fact that, like, meme culture and pop culture, this movie has really great humor in it. And most of it comes from Batman, which is ironic, because you have this guy saying that he's joylessness. Um, I think the humor in this is great.
I agree.
It's probably Nolan's funniest movie.
And even if the movie doesn't leave you with a beaming smile on your face, ready to go skip down the road, get over it. That's
It's a
not what the
Batman
movie
movie.
is supposed to do. You don't watch The Godfather and go, "Oh, that was wonderful. I feel so
Yeah,
joyful.
yeah.
I just want to go skip down the road and say hi to everyone I meet because I just watched The Godfather and I'm so uplifted." It's it, no,
It's just a really stupid, like, not a compare. Like, it's just a really stupid comment to pass. Like, it's like
well,
saying, that horror movie wasn't fun loving enough. That should have been a more light-hearted horror movie.
yes. Well,
It's a Batman movie. What do you expect?
speaking of stupid comments, let's go to our final article from the pillar of comic book movie garbage journalism, Screen Rant,
Do you want me to read it?
naming and shaming Colin McCormack with his article Batman: 5 Ways the Dark Knight Has Aged Poorly and 5 Ways It's Timeless. Do you want to read that highlighted section?
Though Joker clearly steals the show, The Dark Knight also introduced another of Batman's most popular enemies. Two-Face is the villainous alter ego of Harvey Dent after having his face brutally scarred. We had seen this character brought to the big screen in campy fashion for Batman Forever, but this was the chance to have a grounded and dark version of the character. Sadly, we don't get to spend too much time with him as a villain. Though Dent is a compelling character for much of the movie, his transition is extremely quick, and then he is killed off very quickly. The character just doesn't have the impact fans were hoping for.
And I'll note as well that Jayden has automatically corrected some spelling
That's
or
just
some
poor, isn't it?
punctuation
Yeah.
in this article. So the last sentence, to read word for word, is the character just doesn't have the impact fans are hoping for. That was from the website. So, Mr. Colin McCormack, you need to proofread your work, my friend. And you also
Yeah,
need to
that's
proofread
embarrassing.
your opinions, because if you don't think that Harvey Dent in this film is a grounded and dark version of Two-Face, then I don't know what planet you are
You're
living on.
living on.
Because he is literally pointing a gun at a child at the end of this film. I don't know how you can get much grounded and darker than that. But look, I registered the point of we don't get to spend too much time with him as a villain, but he's been worked into the plot in a very specific way, and we need the resolution of his arc in this film.
Yeah.
I'm sure Colin McCormack would like Harvey Dent post-credit scene where it teases Harvey Dent's return in a future film. But here in Christopher Nolan Town, we decide to conclude films with a conclusive and satisfying ending.
Prior to the credits.
Yes. In fact, usually when the credits roll, it means you can leave.
I'd be so embarrassed if I wrote that article.
Especially with that last sentence just having incorrect words.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those were some criticisms from
fun.
internet idiots. Are you swayed at all? Are you swayed by any of those arguments, compelling as they may be?
It's got me thinking twice about the movie. Obviously not. I mean, these people have like zero foundation to their comments. I mean, predictable structure, no humor. Harvey Dent sucks. It's like What are you saying? What did you
It's just
watch the
contrarian.
movie?
It's
Yeah, I mean,
contrarian nonsense, you know.
it's just, they're just trying to rile up people, and maybe they've maybe they've succeeded in doing that because look at what we're doing right now. But would I sacrifice my prestige as a quasi film reviewer for maybe a few bucks? Hell no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Screen Rant. You can always count on them. Um, let's proceed to the music segment. So we have a playlist called the Rewatch playlist where we are adding songs to the playlist whenever we review a film. And don't laugh, Jayden, just because we haven't put any music in there for the past year.
We,
But no, it's
you.
So, what are the soundtracks from, or what are the pieces of music that we are putting into the Rewatch playlist this week from the Dark Knight soundtrack?
So we're putting in Like a Dog Chasing Cars, which is the final song of the movie, and the 12-minute orchestral masterpiece that is A Dark Knight.
Mm. Yes, fantastic. Some brilliant music there. Definitely check it out and have a listen because, yeah, it's worth a listen.
For sure.
Well, we'll get into our final thoughts now. So, why are you going to give this movie an A+, Jane?
I mean, I feel like I'm just obligated to give this movie an A+, but that's not to say that this movie doesn't deserve an A+. It's just, it's such a timeless movie. Like we've been saying throughout this podcast, it's enjoyable every single watch. It's just such a complex script. It has great themes, and that's themes as in literary themes, not musical themes. And just to segue onto the musical themes are fantastic. Um, it's just great, and I don't think we discussed this enough. It's great as a standalone film as well,
Oh, absolutely.
and I feel like that's something that comic book movies really um,
Absolutely.
lost in today's society. Like you could watch any comic book movie and it would be connected to some other one, and it would have a post credit sequence, and that's really bled its way onto many just general films in general. Like I watched the Equalizer 3 the other day and it had a post credit scene. It's like,
Oh,
actually no, sorry, it didn't. The Nun had a post credit scene. And it's like, why does the Nun need a post credit scene? Like, what does the world come to? But yeah, The Dark Knight is just such a complete movie in its own respect. Um, it really is just a standalone piece, and how Jonathan and Christopher Nolan crafted this, um, you know, middle movie of this trilogy and made it stand out in its own respect is really incredible. And I haven't even touched on the acting, but obviously it's clear that that is just top notch.
yeah. I mean, you've summed it up pretty well there. It's Nolan's best movie, and he's one of the best directors ever. It's the best Batman movie. It's the best superhero movie. It's the best crime movie. It certainly could be just the best movie. Um, I absolutely love the point that you made there about the film being good enough to stand on its own, but it's also very deliberately standing on its own as well. You know, if you look at the three Batman films, they're all connected. All three Nolan Batman films, they're all connected. Like they have characters that progress through the three films. But if you take the individual films, there's always a journey that ends appropriately when the credits roll. And this film certainly could have been the ending of Nolan Batman. You know, it would have been a wonderful ending if they just went, you know what, we're not going to do a third one. That's it. Be like, fair enough. That ending was pretty sweet. They went on to do another one, and it was good fun. But this was a masterpiece. It still is a masterpiece. It will be a masterpiece for a long time. There is no comic book movie that even comes close to The Dark Knight in terms of its writing, its performances, its cinematography, its music, all of those elements combined. And it is, I wish I could have seen this in the theater. I mean, I would have been 6 years old, so I wouldn't have really grasped, the concepts of, vigilantism and, state-sponsored authority, and, some men just want to watch the world burn. But man, I really hope it comes to cinemas one day. Like, I hope they re-release it one day, because I want to see this on the big screen. I want to see that truck flip over.
Yeah.
I want to see the 18-wheeler get flipped in IMAX on the big screen, because that's how this movie was meant to be watched.
For sure.
But yeah, so Christopher Nolan, his magnum opus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll leave it at that. A+ from me, obviously.
Great movie.
Yeah, so we've talked about The Dark Knight. It's a AA+, perfect rating. And we'll leave it there for today. So thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Rewatch Podcast. If you'd like to follow us on Instagram, you can do so at the Rewatch Pod. If you would like to subscribe to the YouTube channel, just search the Rewatch on YouTube. Obviously, we'll be putting those songs into the Spotify playlist, so be sure to check that out with the link in the description. Jayden, any ideas for the next episode of the Rewatch Podcast?
I'll give you a few words, and that's it.
Okay.
Let's see Paul Allen's card.
Thank you for listening, and bye for now.
See ya.